The radio crackled to life at 3:27 a.m. as Navy SEAL Team 6 huddled in their forward operating base in Afghanistan. The voice on the other end was tense, barely controlled. Staff Sergeant Mike Hartwell grabbed the radio, his weathered hands steady despite the chaos erupting around their position. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. Enemy fire had been raining down on their location for the past 4 hours. What started as a routine reconnaissance mission had turned into a nightmare when Taliban forces surrounded their small team. Now they were trapped, pinned down behind crumbling concrete walls with ammunition running low and no clear escape route. Hartwell wasn't your typical SEAL operator. While his teammates were expert marksmen and demolition specialists, he had earned his place on the team as their medic. His job was to keep everyone alive, patch up wounds, and make sure the team made it home in one piece. He was good at his job, damn good, but what nobody knew was that Mike had a secret talent that even he didn't fully understand. Back in basic training, instructors had noticed something unusual about the quiet kid from Montana. When Mike picked up a rifle, something magical happened. His first time on the shooting range, he had hit targets that seasoned soldiers struggled with. But Mike had always been more interested in saving lives than taking them, so he chose the medical track instead of becoming a sniper. Now, trapped behind enemy lines with his team's lives hanging in the balance, that hidden talent was about to become their only hope for survival. Team leader Lieutenant Jake Morrison crawled over to where Mike was treating a wounded teammate. Blood covered Morrison's uniform and his face was grim. The situation was deteriorating fast, and they both knew it. Morrison spoke in a low, urgent voice. The enemy had positioned 3 sniper teams on the surrounding hilltops, and they had the Americans completely pinned down. Every time someone tried to move, bullets would tear through the air, forcing them back behind cover. They had called for backup, but the nearest friendly forces were 6 hours away. At this rate, they wouldn't last another hour. Mike finished bandaging Corpsman Peters, who had taken shrapnel to his leg from an RPG blast. As he worked, his mind was racing. He could hear the enemy snipers taking turns, methodically trying to pick off his teammates. The sound of bullets hitting concrete sent shivers down his spine, but something else was building inside him, something he had never felt before. Morrison was explaining their desperate situation when Mike suddenly stood up. The lieutenant grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back down, but Mike gently pushed his hand away. His eyes had changed, focused on something far in the distance that others couldn't see. Mike asked Morrison for his rifle, a request that made the lieutenant pause. Everyone knew Mike was their medic, not a shooter. But something in Mike's voice, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before, made Morrison hand over his weapon without question. The rifle felt different in Mike's hands this time. Where once it had been just another tool, now it felt like an extension of his body. He could feel the weight distribution, the balance, even the slight variations in the trigger pull. It was as if the weapon was speaking to him, telling him exactly what it was capable of. Mike moved to a small gap in their concrete barrier, a position that gave him a narrow view of the surrounding hills. His teammates watched in amazement as their medic transformed before their eyes. Gone was the gentle, careful man who spent his time patching wounds. In his place was someone they had never seen before, someone with the cold, calculating presence of a born killer. The first enemy sniper was positioned approximately 800 meters away, hidden behind rocks on the eastern ridge. Mike could see the glint of his scope occasionally catching the moonlight. Without hesitation, without even seeming to aim, Mike pulled the trigger. The shot rang out across the valley, and immediately the enemy fire from the eastern position stopped. Morrison used his binoculars to scan the ridge, and what he saw made his jaw drop. The enemy sniper was down, taken out with a single shot at a distance that would have challenged their best marksmen. But Mike wasn't finished. He had already shifted his position, tracking the second sniper team located on a hill to the north. This shot was even more difficult, nearly 1,000 meters through shifting wind patterns. Again, Mike didn't hesitate. The rifle cracked, and another enemy position went silent. By now, his entire team was watching in stunned silence. Their medic, the guy who had never fired a shot in anger during 3 tours of duty, was systematically eliminating enemy positions with the precision of a legendary sniper. The third and final enemy sniper team realized what was happening and tried to relocate, but Mike was already tracking their movement. This was the most difficult shot yet, over 1,200 meters to a target that was actively moving and trying to take cover. Most snipers would need several attempts and careful calculations for such a shot. Mike took a deep breath, and in that moment everything around him seemed to slow down. He could feel the wind patterns, calculate the bullet drop, and predict exactly where his target would be when the bullet arrived. It wasn't conscious thought, it was pure instinct, as if he had been born for this moment. The shot was perfect. The final enemy position fell silent, and suddenly the valley was quiet except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Morrison was the first to speak, his voice filled with disbelief. He wanted to know where Mike had learned to shoot like that, because what they had just witnessed was beyond anything they had seen from even their most experienced snipers. Mike lowered the rifle, and his teammates could see that he was just as surprised as they were. He explained that he didn't really know what had happened. It was like the rifle had been guiding him, showing him exactly where to aim and when to fire. He had felt completely in control, yet completely out of control at the same time. As they waited for extraction, word of what had happened began to spread through military communications. 3 impossible shots, taken under extreme pressure, each one saving the lives of an entire SEAL team. By the time they reached base camp at 7:15 a.m., senior officers were already asking questions. Commander William Nash, the head of special operations for the region, was waiting for them when they landed. Nash was a legend himself, a career military man who had seen everything there was to see in modern warfare. But even he had never heard of anything quite like this. Nash pulled Mike aside for a private debriefing. He wanted to know everything, from Mike's training background to exactly what he had felt during those crucial moments. Mike did his best to explain, but how do you describe something that you don't fully understand yourself? The commander listened carefully, asking detailed questions about each shot. The distances, the conditions, the targets, everything. When Mike finished his account, Nash sat back in his chair with a thoughtful expression. Nash explained that what Mike had accomplished was theoretically impossible for someone without years of specialized sniper training. The shots he had made would have been challenging for their best marksmen under ideal conditions. To make them in combat, under pressure, with minimal preparation, suggested abilities that went beyond normal human capability. Over the next few days, word continued to spread through military channels. Mike's story reached the highest levels of command, and soon he found himself facing a choice that would change his life forever. General Patricia Hawkins, commander of all Special Operations Forces, flew in specifically to meet with Mike. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that seemed to see right through you. She had built her career by recognizing exceptional talent and knowing how to use it effectively. The general got straight to the point. The military needed snipers, especially ones with Mike's apparent natural abilities. She was offering him a chance to join the most elite sniper program in the world, training with the best instructors and the most advanced equipment available. But Mike was conflicted. His whole identity was built around being a healer, someone who saved lives rather than taking them. The idea of becoming a professional killer, even for his country, went against everything he thought he believed about himself. The general seemed to understand his hesitation. She explained that the world was a dangerous place, filled with people who wanted to hurt innocent civilians and American soldiers. Sometimes, she said, the only way to save lives is to take them. A single well-placed shot could prevent attacks that might kill dozens of people. Mike spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about the decision. He walked the base perimeter, stared at the stars, and tried to figure out who he really was. Was he a healer or a warrior? Could he be both? Finally, he realized that the choice wasn't really between saving lives and taking them. It was about how he could best serve his country and his fellow soldiers. If he had been given this gift, this incredible ability with a rifle, then maybe he had a responsibility to use it. When he told General Hawkins his decision, she just nodded as if she had known all along what he would choose. Within a week, Mike found himself at a classified training facility in Virginia, beginning the most intensive and secretive military training program in the world. The instructors at the sniper school were legends themselves, men who had made impossible shots in every conflict of the past 20 years. But even they were amazed by what they saw from Mike. He absorbed training at an incredible rate, mastering techniques that took other students months to learn. Master Sergeant Tony Blackwood, the chief instructor, had trained hundreds of snipers during his career. He pulled Mike aside after just 2 weeks of training with a proposition that had never been made before. Normally, the program took 6 months to complete. Mike was already performing at a level that exceeded their graduation requirements. Blackwood explained that there was a special mission coming up, something that required the absolute best sniper they could find. The details were classified, but it was the kind of assignment that could change the course of the war. They needed someone who could make shots that others couldn't, someone with Mike's unique abilities. Mike agreed without hesitation. 3 weeks later, he found himself on a helicopter flying toward a classified location somewhere in the mountains of Pakistan. His mission briefing was simple but terrifying. A high-value target had been located in a compound that was impossible to assault directly. The only way to eliminate the threat was with a single, perfect shot from over 2 miles away. 2 miles. Even the best snipers in the world rarely attempted shots beyond 1 mile, and those were under ideal conditions. This shot would be through mountain air, across varying elevations, with multiple wind patterns to account for. It was the kind of shot that existed more in legend than reality. But as Mike set up his position on a rocky outcrop overlooking the target area, he felt that same strange calm that had come over him during his first combat engagement. The massive rifle felt natural in his hands, and he could almost see the path the bullet would need to travel. He spent hours studying the target area, calculating distances and wind patterns. But when the moment came, when his target finally appeared in the compound below, all the mathematics disappeared. Once again, it was pure instinct that guided his shot. The bullet traveled for over 4 seconds before finding its mark. By the time the sound reached the compound, the mission was already complete. A threat that could have cost countless lives had been eliminated with a single, impossible shot. When Mike returned to base, he found that his legend had grown even larger. The story of the medic who became a sniper was spreading throughout the military, inspiring other soldiers and earning him respect from the highest levels of command. But for Mike, the most important moment came when he reunited with his original SEAL team. Morrison and the others welcomed him back not as a changed man, but as the same person who had always been willing to do whatever it took to keep his team safe. Peters, the teammate Mike had treated during that first firefight, shook his hand with genuine gratitude. He said that Mike had shown them all something important that night. Sometimes the greatest act of healing is knowing when to pick up a weapon and fight. Over the following months, Mike continued to serve in both roles. He remained the team's medic, the person they turned to when someone was hurt. But he also became their guardian angel, the one who could eliminate threats from distances that seemed impossible. His reputation continued to grow with each mission. Enemy forces began to fear the American sniper who seemed to be able to shoot through walls and around mountains. Bounties were placed on his head, but Mike had become so skilled at his craft that he was essentially untouchable. The other SEALs began to understand that they were witnessing something truly special. Mike hadn't just become a good sniper, he had become something unprecedented in military history. His abilities seemed to transcend normal human limitations, as if he had tapped into some deeper understanding of physics and precision that others couldn't access. Years later, when military historians would write about this period, they would struggle to explain what had made Mike so extraordinary. Some would point to his medical training, suggesting that his understanding of anatomy gave him insights into shot placement that others lacked. Others would focus on his calm temperament, the way he could remain focused under extreme pressure. But his teammates knew the truth was simpler and more profound. Mike had discovered that his greatest strength wasn't in his hands or his eyes, but in his heart. Every shot he took was motivated not by a desire to kill, but by a need to protect. He wasn't a warrior who had learned to heal, he was a healer who had learned to fight. The mission that would define his legacy came during his 4th year as a sniper. Intelligence had located a terrorist leader who was planning an attack on American civilians. The target was hiding in an urban area where a traditional military assault would result in massive civilian casualties. Mike was given an assignment that seemed impossible even by his standards. Eliminate the target from a position 3 miles away, through a crowded city, with minimal risk to innocent bystanders. The shot would require him to fire through a small window, account for multiple wind patterns created by tall buildings, and time his shot to avoid hitting any civilians who might be in the area. As Mike prepared for the mission, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had started as a small-town kid who wanted to help people, and somehow he had become one of the most feared snipers in the world. But at his core, he was still the same person, still motivated by the same desire to protect others. The shot, when it came, was everything his reputation had promised. Fired at 11:37 p.m. under a moonless sky, the bullet traveled across the sleeping city with perfect precision. The threat was eliminated without any risk to civilians, and an attack that could have killed hundreds of innocent people was prevented. When the news of the successful mission reached the Pentagon, even the most senior officers found themselves amazed by what they had heard. The shot was being called the greatest in military history, a demonstration of skill and precision that redefined what was possible in modern warfare. But for Mike, sitting in a safe house thousands of miles from home, the moment wasn't about glory or recognition. It was about the knowledge that somewhere in America, hundreds of people would wake up safe because of what he had done. Families would have breakfast together, children would go to school, and life would continue because one man had been willing to do whatever it took to protect them. As he cleaned his rifle in the quiet darkness, Mike thought about the path that had led him here. He had never wanted to be a killer, and in many ways he still didn't consider himself one. He was a protector, a guardian, someone who had been given an extraordinary gift and had chosen to use it in service of others. The SEALs had said it couldn't be done, that a medic couldn't become a world-class sniper. They had been wrong. What they hadn't understood was that the same qualities that made someone a great healer, the patience, the precision, the unwavering focus on preserving life, could also make them an extraordinary warrior when the situation demanded it. Mike's story would be told and retold throughout military circles for years to come. It would inspire other soldiers to push beyond their perceived limitations and show them that sometimes the most unlikely people are capable of the most extraordinary things. But most importantly, it would serve as a reminder that true strength comes not from the desire to destroy, but from the determination to protect those who cannot protect themselves. In the end, Mike had proven that the greatest warriors are not those who love war, but those who understand that sometimes fighting is the only way to preserve peace. He had shown that a single person, motivated by love and armed with exceptional skill, could change the course of history with nothing more than perfect aim and an unshakable moral compass.